Hello, travelers, and welcome to the Horror Greenbook, the channel that takes you from coast to coast and con to con. I'm your travel guide, Brendan, bringing to you a very special edition of the Horror Greenbook, bringing to you our Sinners Spoiler Talk show. Guys, it's been a spectacular film. It's gaining all types of buzz. It's killing it at the box office. So, let's go ahead and, go ahead and get some discussion started about it. I wanted to um, let some time go and let more and more people see the film so that more people can discuss their thoughts and things. So, those of you who are, new to the channel, welcome. I am your travel guide, Brendan, and this is the Scary Sanctuary. And for returning members of the GBG, of course, welcome back to your home away from home. So, hope everyone's having a great night. And I want to remind you that this is going to be full of spoilers. So, hey, what's going on, Tony? I see you're in here. You're freaking hungover from last night. Didn't go to work today. Hey, that's how it is sometimes, man. You still need to see it. Well, when we get super close to discussing spoilers, just cover your ears or just put it on mute for a bit. But yeah, I want to welcome you all here. I want to shout out everyone that's in the live chat and encourage you all to go ahead and comment. I want to know your thoughts. We're going to talk about various parts about the movie, of course, the music, the cinematography, um, and those of you that are new to it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because we do a lot of cool horror related things on this channel. So if you are a fan of horror films, you're interested in horror conventions, filming locations, things of that nature, you definitely will want to stick around. So, guys, if you're interested in this type of content, make sure to hit that like button and just let me know, guys, where are you watching from and what is your initial reaction to Sinners? If you have seen Sinners, what did you guys think? First off, um, let's set the scene, guys. What was your first impressions of the film? For me, um, let's start with the trailer. I absolutely saw the trailer late last year when it first came out, and being someone that's originally from the Mississippi Delta region of the country, particularly the Tennessee Delta side of the country, um, I was really, really geeked on seeing this particular film, knowing that Ryan Coogler was involved in directing it and writing it, and that his muse, Michael B. Jordan, his main creative partner, was going to be involved, and that he was going to be playing twins in a dual role. It made me even more excited. And then not only that, but the fact that, hey, I'm from this area. I'm really involved in that culture. I'm really, well versed in the lore. So the fact that, you know, vampires or dark forces were going to be a part of this, it really led to a lot of credence with this film because there's a lot of dark and scary stuff in regards to the stories with that area of the country. I'll have to talk to you guys about like Voodoo Village and other things on a future video. Hey, what's going on, Bubba? I see you in here, man. You don't mind spoilers? Okay, cool, cool. I'm glad to see that, you and Tony. I'm glad to have you guys in here. So just kick back and enjoy the fun. But yeah, guys. So needless to say, I'm very well versed in the legend of Robert Johnson, being someone that's really heavy into the music that's created around that area of the country. Being that it's the home of rock and roll, it's the home of blues. You know, so many connected genres around that area. Country western is very popular around that area. So a lot of folk music is huge. So man, it's very glad to see that that was getting a lot of attention. And as a horror fan, that was just like absolutely fantastic. Yeah, you're right. Robert Johnson for life. Yeah, yeah, it is a Black Craft cult hat. But yeah, guys, so I was just really, really geeked for it. So it was my most anticipated film of 2025. And let me just go ahead and get the suspense out of the way. It totally delivered. If you guys are, in tune with all of the news involving Sinners, I mean, it's doing fantastic at the box office. It's breaking records, and it's holding on strong. Going into what will be what its third week or fourth week, and competing up against Thunderbolts, which is you got Disney slash Marvel money behind that, and it's still holding on strong. So it's a strong testament to just the word of mouth that's been going on with this film, and just the quality of the filmmaking. But let's just get into it a little bit, guys. But I totally think that it totally delivers. I love the setting of the Mississippi Delta, the fact that a huge portion of it was going to take place in a juke joint. So I'm very familiar with those hole in the wall type venues where patrons will go to have a great time, get some cheap drinks, dance your heart out, and not expect to have any type of air conditioning. But I mean, it just led to its authenticity. So I was just completely ecstatic to see it. I finally got to see it on the release date on that particular Thursday. And wow, guys, I was absolutely captivated, spellbound by how, you know, great of a film it was. And after my first watch, I really didn't want to be a victim of the moment and think of like, wow, this may be like one of those like instant classics. Like this may be one of those films that just hits and audiences really resonate with it, because it immediately resonated with myself. But I wanted to, just think on it, and it's been one of those films that's been constantly on my mind since seeing it. I saw it again like a week ago, and I'm looking forward to seeing it again in 70 millimeter. So that's going to be fantastic. Yeah, you're right. Crossroads for sure. Yes. Do I think it's better than When Evil Lurks? Well, it's a bit different. It's hard to compare that, bumper, because those are two completely different films. How I'm seeing it, like with Sinners, Sinners is more transformative. Like When Evil Lurks, that's strictly for the horror film fans. But with Sinners, this is for just general cinephiles. Like this is going to go beyond genre. So if you're just someone that's totally not into horror films, I will still recommend Sinners to you. I can't say the same for When Evil Lurks. So that's why I would say that Sinners, if you had to ask me to compare the two, yeah, I would say Sinners would be better, but it wouldn't be fair to compare the two. They're just two completely different films to compare. An apt comparison will probably be, whether this was better than From Dusk Till Dawn, because there's a lot of similarities between the two films. But I think that this is definitely better than From Dusk Till Dawn. It's just more woven into the film, into the fabric of the story. Um, there's so much that they're telling you in the film without you necessarily having to have a lot of exposition. If you knew the history of the area, then you would know, like, oh wow, it's cool that they included that. But you probably wouldn't notice it unless you were from the area or familiar with the culture of that area. So that's what I thought was really cool about that. But yeah, I mean, just so many things that they portrayed, like just the symbolism of using the Jim Crow South, because I thought that was awesome, because you don't really get a lot of representation of that particular time period, and even less so do you have representations of black people actually showing joy. because this is like a long running theme of like people saying like, well, I would never want to go back in time because dealing with racism and things of that nature, or the super open racism of the Jim Crow South. But things weren't always super bad back then. I look at pictures of my grandparents and great grandparents, and there's pictures of them smiling. There's pictures of them at parties and gatherings and having a good time. So the fact that this film shows that part of life is super great, and it shows the community, um, and just among lines, because you have the Chows, with Grace and Bo with their characters, and them being the Chinese, Delta, well, the Delta Chinese, community, their representation, and that's extremely real because my mother had a very cool friend who was a Chinese Delta woman, and she was super awesome. Just had a Southern accent, and that's just completely real. That there's remnants of that community still around. But I love how like the representation of how it turned from like a haven until like a hunting ground as well. The fact that it used that whole vampire lore trope of having to be invited in, and how the juke joint was a safe haven. It was a safe space, and how that actually gets turned into like a hunting ground in a way. That was just absolutely dope symbolism. So I just love how that lore all tied into things. Let's see here was yeah. And I would say it's better than Dusk because they just delve a little bit more into it. Like Dusk is a fun popcorn movie, and I love From Dusk Till Dawn. Like it's a great film, but I would not say that From Dusk Till Dawn has any type of real cultural value to it. It's just a fun flick. But Ryan Coogler was very forthcoming with From Dusk Till Dawn being an inspiration of this film, also with the faculty. So he was highly inspired by Robert Rodriguez's films. So once you see these films, you'll see that obvious inspiration, which is very cool. Oh yeah, the soundtrack is very heavy with it on all types of like folk music that was heard around that time. You get a little bit of Irish folk music because that's connected with that region as well. You had a lot of people of Irish ancestry, and they mixed and mingled on those plantations with black people. So we learned a lot of those same songs, and it's so rich. With having a little bit that was around that time represented. So man, I highly recommend getting the soundtrack and the score because Ludwig, he's hitting it out of the park. He's already won two Oscars, one for Black Panther and the other for Oppenheimer, and I'm pretty sure that he's like a shoe in for winning his third Oscar for Sinners. Like the music is just fantastic, absolutely phenomenal. Hey, we got Happy in the house. What's going on, Happy? So Happy, you said that you saw Sinners recently. What did you think? What was your first impressions of Sinners? I want to get people's thoughts on their feelings on it. But let's see here. But there's so many cool things. I mean, things that are authentic, like the use of hoodoo within it, because hoodoo's very huge in Mississippi Delta culture. Whether people know about it or not, it's just something that's totally ingrained in the culture. Something that a lot of people will write off as like old wives' tales, but there's something a bit more in that Mississippi River water, just the spirits and things. So even going back to the Native Americans, a lot of their folklore, which was melded into the folklore of the black people in the region, the Irish people, the English people. Like it's all something that's been interconnected, and I think that's like something that was highly important that needed to be shown in this film. So I thought that was like something that was super cool. That hoodoo was a very big part of it, the magic, because you get all types of stories about weird things that happen at night that I grew up with, and things that my grandmother told me. So, that's super dope, man. Yeah, just like in the Skeleton Key, for sure. But the thing is, hoodoo's a bit different. In the Skeleton Key, it was voodoo. But hoodoo's a bit different because it's very distinct to the Mississippi Delta region. Because with voodoo itself, it's more of a Louisiana thing, and hoodoo is more Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, even down to the Carolinas. With voodoo, that has a little bit more of the French influence to it, but with hoodoo itself, it's a little bit more English and Irish influenced with the influences and the connections per se. But it will definitely remind you of the Skeleton Key for sure because it just has that magic vibe. But the magic in regards to this, it kind of has these moments where it plays into part with like with John Carpenter's The Thing. I know Happy you'll recognize that scene as well, where they're using garlic to kind of find out if someone is a vampire or not. And one of the characters, Annie, who is the practitioner of voodoo, is a bit as that representative of it. So she's the one that's kind of aware of like all these different dark forces because if you're someone that's like a spiritual representative, whether or not you're a Catholic priest or a hoodoo woman, or you are a like a witch doctor abroad on some island, you're going to be in tune with the forces of nature, whether or not they be the good or the bad per se. So I thought that was like something like super cool that she represents the good witch per se, and how she's the one that offers the protection and knowledge, and a lot of the defense that's seen in this particular film. So another part of it that's very important to it is like mojo bags. There's a very important plot point to where one of the twins, who is Smoke, and we'll talk a little bit about the characters in a little bit. Smoke has a connection with Annie, where she's basically like his wife or ex-wife, ex-girlfriend, ex-spouse, and she has a mojo bag for him, which she has used for protection for him. And anyone who has had a connection with the witch, who necessarily doesn't believe, but you actually had that connection with her, so you go along with what she believes. He halfway believes in it. It's more of a thing that she takes serious. So, hey, what's going on, Vero? Yeah, so Annie's like super dope. She represents that woman that's like totally knowledgeable, strong, but also still sensual and sexual in a way. I thought that was very important. They didn't really take away her sexuality, but also, she was really strong and stern at the same time. That was a really cool balance. But yeah, I really agree with you on that, Vero, in regards to the Choctaw tribe. And I think we'll probably get a prequel in regards to the Choctaw tribe and Remick, because there's still a lot of meat on the bones with that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Hoodoo's definitely more folk magic, and voodoo's more of a religion for sure. Because with my grandmother, she was a practitioner, and she was very adamant on people correcting people in regards to that because she would definitely consider herself a Christian, and with voodoo, the gods in that are a different pantheon. So if you're familiar with like the Orisha and things of that nature, that's a very fine line with it. But there are certain connections, like for instance, like with the crossroads. Some people say it was like the devil that met with Robert Johnson, but if you speak with other people that are part of the hoodoo culture, they would say it was Papa Legba. So that it has the connection to the Orisha as well. So yes, definitely it was very well shot, Happy, and that one big music scene. Oh, we're definitely going to get to that music scene, but for sure, that music scene is something I've never seen in like a horror film. Like, so that's something I think film students are going to really talk about in the future, like for years to come. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it was cool to see the Choctaw there, and I think there's going to be definitely some more with the Choctaw, because the way Remick comes onto the film, he's just like straight into the action, and the Choctaw were obviously in the middle of the hunt, and obviously they would have got him, but time was running out. So I would love to hear like a prequel, and even if it's like a comic book or something like that. Like I would love to have that. Yeah, you never heard about Papa Legba? Yeah, Papa Legba's awesome. You have representation of Papa Legba and other stuff like American Horror Story, the one with the witches, Coven, American Horror Story Coven. So there's a lot of scenes with Papa Legba and Angela Bassett, who plays Marie Laveau. But yeah, I love the Choctaw representation in that because it was a huge melting pot down there in the Mississippi Delta, and then with like the Choctaw, and then a lot of the Indian tribes moving, especially because of like the Trail of Tears, because there are a lot of tribes, especially in regards to like tribes like the Seminoles and things of that nature that had to do a lot of migrating to and fro, having to deal with Jim Crow, especially like with like the freedmen and the black members of a lot of those tribes. So it's a very interesting history. So I think like there's so much meat on the bones to explore more of the storylines with it. So you're totally right with that, Vero. Some seasons are better than others, Tony. That's for sure. But I would say the standout ones are like Murder House, Asylum, Coven for sure. And then there are other good seasons like Freak Show and etc. So you know like anything that's had a long run, some seasons are gonna be better than others. But consistently, they're pretty good for sure. Yeah, exactly, Vero. It could have made a great miniseries because, if you once you see it, you kind of want more. But that's a great feeling to have because it kind of reminds me of like if you saw like the movie Alien. It was a great contained story, but after a while, you're just like, man, but what's going to happen with Ripley? But what's going on with this shady corporation that they're working for? So I can see people doing all types of fan fiction for sure, but we'll see what the future holds for it. Hopefully, Ryan will do a prequel. I think we'll have more that fans will enjoy in regards to a prequel and building this world. Yeah, for sure, Bumper. But let's see what else. Let's go on down to certain characters. All right, guys. So character, the casting of this film and the characters are a major, major plus. Um, first of all, there's going to be a new Oscar category of casting, so I feel like whoever did the casting is probably going to win an Oscar for that as well because there's no weak links in the cast in this role. Everyone does a phenomenal job. Um, I'm not sure how long it's in theaters, Bumper. I know after next week they're going to do the 70 millimeter runs because they had to put a pause in it for Thunderbolts, but a lot of people put up enough of a fuss because they weren't able to see it in theaters in 70 millimeter that they wanted to actually reissue it. So next week is going to be back in theaters for 70 millimeter, and I think I'm trying to remember the cities that are on the list. Let me see. Let me double check. Uh, but I didn't get a chance to see it, unfortunately, in 70 millimeter. But when it was announced that they were going to do it again, I snagged I snagged mine very quickly. But they're going to show them at 70 millimeter again in New York, Los Angeles, Irvine, California, San Francisco, Indianapolis, Temple, Arizona, Fort Lauderdale, Dallas, and then Woodbridge, Ontario, in Canada. But as far as the regular runs and from some of the other IMAX screenings and things of that nature, I would imagine it will be in theaters for at least a few more weeks. I would say at least another 2, 3 weeks. They're still making tons of money, so they have no reason to pull it out of theaters for sure. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. It'll still be in theaters by then for sure, Bumper. Yeah, you're right, Vero. Remick is a very intriguing character. I don't know what it is about Ryan Coogler and crafting his villains in such a very empathetic way to where you're just like, well, they may be a bad person, but I kind of understand where he's coming from. I can't necessarily say I fault him for feeling that way, even if I don't agree. So yeah, I'm totally up for some more sinners. But yeah, but the casting was great. I mean, I was a bit nervous with Michael B. Jordan playing two roles. With his acting is a bit hit or miss sometimes. You know, he did phenomenal in like Black Panther as Killmonger, one of his best performances. He's done some other things. I mean, but as far as like, something that everyone can really truly grasp with, I think he really knocked it out of the park with this performance of Smoke and Stack, the twins. They are two completely different people, but obviously twins. If anyone that has known identical twins, you would know the distinct differences between the two, to where there would be some sort of obvious tell. So that's how it is with Smoke and Stack. Stack is a little bit more for, even though they're both gangsters, Stack is the one that's a little bit more forgiving. He's the one that's a little bit more of a people person. I'm a little bit more of a smooth talker. He's the one that can, maneuver things a little bit with some finesse. Now, Smoke, on the other hand, Smoke is the more violent one. He's the one that's not going to want to talk things out with you. He's going to get straight to the point. And, he's the one that's going to be more willing to use violence as a means to get his way. So, really easy way to remember: Stack is about those stacks. Smoke is all about bringing the smoke. You're right. They cousins. Yeah, I love that dynamic between them. It really, you can tell that he did some research with twins to get those little nuances correct, because they were always really really cool in regards to how they went about their day to day. The more you go about seeing the film, it's easy to tell them apart. Like they do the obvious tell with giving I believe Smoke is wearing blue and Stack is wearing red in the film, and that's the easy way to tell them apart. And then also they both have like gold teeth, and one twin wears his gold teeth on one side of the mouth, and the other twin has his gold teeth on the other side. So that's another way of telling them apart as well. So but once you get to the flow of the film, you kind of realize like, okay, Stack is more of the sweetheart, and Smoke is the more gruff one. But there's a reason for why the way they are the way that they are. The twins reveal that they grew up in an abusive household with a father that was not a good guy. So Smoke, who you kind of get the feeling is the older twin, because he's the one that protects Stack. They're the twins in their town that has a reputation that precedes them, as obvious in the film. But it's really cool because Smoke, he has a bit of a protector vibe to him. You find out that he's the one that ends up killing their dad, because their dad was attacking Stack, and Smoke was always the one that was protecting Stack, and that comes into play later on in the film when Stack is the one that's turned into a vampire, and Smoke says to him, at the conclusion, he's like, "I wish I could protect you," and Stack says, "You always did." So that was a very cool callback of the brothers' love and the attachment to each other. So you like the names? Yeah, the names are really cool for sure. But it's very reminiscent because I everyone in the Mississippi Delta region has names like that. Everyone has a nickname. If you're not granted a nickname, you're not outside. So um, the more you get to hang with people, someone's going to call you a nickname based on something. So with Bumper, if you grew up down there, they would definitely give you a name based on your height. So you'd be like Skyscraper or something like that. Just some random nickname that just sticks. And Tony would definitely be Triple T, no matter where he's at. But it's a dope one. Oh yeah, Smoke is definitely like George Clooney for sure, most definitely in Dusk. And it's such a fun film, guys. I mean, you get other characters. You get the characters that fill out the community. Even though Michael B. Jordan is the main draw because he's the star power of the film, the actual heart of the film is their cousin, Smoke and Stack's cousin, their younger cousin by the name of Sammy, who goes by the nickname of Preacher Boy. And Sammy is a very cool character. Sammy's character reminds me a lot of the movie Death by Temptation, because his character is all about that all too familiar trope in rock and roll films of battling your ties to your religious background. Your father may be a preacher, or you may have been raised in the church, but you have this draw to play secular music. You have this draw to play this rock and roll music or this blues music that is just inside of you. But, the religious people are calling it the devil's music because people are shaking their hips and people want to have sex to it. So it's definitely steeped in realism because every, rock and roll legend that you know of has some sort of tie to the church. And, they probably had their earliest recordings doing gospel music. So I thought that was extremely authentic. And then, Sammy, he's coming up under his cousin's influence. He wants to be just like them because they're cool. Everyone knows them. They're making money. They're tied into the gangsters in Chicago, but they're coming back home. So, he wants to be connected with them and have some of their swag, brush off on him. But the cool thing about Sammy is ultra talented. He is blessed with this gift of music that is in him, and he's ultra talented. But his preacher father wants him to be involved in the church, and it's something that draws at him, and he does battle with it like he does battle with the vampires later. Yeah, too tall. Yeah, for sure. That would definitely be something that you would have for sure. That makes sense. But yeah, man, it's a great film because it's so authentic, and it comes to find out that Sammy's character is the heart and soul of the story, and it just rings authentic because anybody that's a music fan, we love these certain artists that are blessed with these gifts of music that it's very hard to, necessarily, do this, to captivate a crowd of people. To captivate a crowd of 25 people, nonetheless, thousands upon thousands of people. But there are people that have that talent to do that. And Sammy represents that. He represents the gift of musicians and how they have the ability to reach people no matter what language they speak, no matter what health they're in or no matter what mood they're in, to lift their moods and lift their spirits. And Sammy has this power, and that's shown when he performs later. It's a fun flick, guys. Moving on, you know, Sammy represents like the new tradition of the blues at that particular time in the 30s. But anyone that is familiar with music, that music is taught through the generations. So we have a very cool character by the name of Delta Slim that's played by Delroy Lindo, who's one of my all-time favorite character actors. He does a great job no matter where you're going to see him at. So Delroy plays like the old guard of bluesmen at that particular time. So when Stack and Sammy roll up on Delta Slim because they're needing someone to play piano at the Juke joint that they're opening up, um, you know, they roll up on him and they're asking him to join them, but he already has a steady gig, paying them in a little bit of liquor, but not that much. So they offer him a pretty sweet deal, and I love his characterization of Delta Slim because he just plays that old hardened blues man that's seen just a ton of stuff. That when he's singing the blues, he's really singing from pain. And you get a little bit of his backstory, and you find out that that is true. There is some pain in Delta Slim's story. So it's just a really well woven film, and to see the banter between him and Sammy. You have this old guy that is just like this grizzled vet, and you have this kind of still young, green, and very wet behind the ears kid, kind of almost going under his wing. It kind of, reminds me of, just the tradition of bluesmen, passing down these, gifts of learning how to play the guitar to musicians that are going to pass the art either further than they're able to. So, there's every character has a definite reason to be there. And I love the title Sinners because everyone in the film is a sinner. Everyone has a particular sin that they're guilty of. And once you see that, you'll definitely see that part of it. I thought it was just phenomenal. Um, see other characters that really stand out. You have the Chows, of course, and I talked about them a little bit earlier about the the Mississippi Delta Chinese characters, but to talk a little bit more about Grace and Bo, I thought they were great characters to be added. The cool thing about that is Grace and Bo, they really represent real people that came down to the Mississippi Delta region, I believe around the 1890s, um, right after the Civil War, basically. A lot of Chinese immigrants started to flow into the Mississippi Delta region, and they worked in a lot of the cotton fields after a lot of black people started to leave them. But the work was hard and they weren't getting paid much, so they eventually just started to open up their own stores, and that's what Bo and Grace represent. Those store owners that opened up their own markets, which they kind of served as a middle ground between black and white people in that region because their stores cater to black clientele and white clients. So it was very cool to see that scene where Stack goes up there and he has a couple of things he has to get from the Childs' store. He goes to Bo's store because he's black, but he needs Grace to make a sign for him. So Bo gets their daughter to go across the street to the store that Grace is working in, which is the whites only store, which is literally just across the road, a quick walk. It is a very cool scene, and she has to come over to get the sign made that the twins want made. So that was very cool to see how they were the liaisons in a lot of ways. Does the movie explain where the vamps come from or how old they are? No, they don't really explain that. That's why I said there's a lot of lore still left. Like I said, the vampires you will find are actually very secondary in this film. This film's more about the culture of that region than the community, because you're the film is about 2 hours and 15 minutes. You really don't really get the vampire action until maybe an hour and 20 minutes in, maybe. And you don't really get the vampires introduced until maybe 30 minutes. So there's times where you're so enthralled in this movie that you kind of forget that there's even vampires in here. So it's a very interesting flick. Like it's a definite genre blender for sure. That's another thing that I say is very reminiscent of From Dusk Till Dawn, because From Dusk Till Dawn is one movie in the first half and it's a completely different movie in the second half. So Sinners has a bit of that for sure. Slim was your favorite character? Yeah, Slim was awesome. Delroy really brought it because he had a lot of he was kind of like the comedic character in this film, but he wasn't like a stupid character that's just like saying stupid stuff that wouldn't be realistic at that moment. He's totally one of those guys that I totally would know, like from that region, because he's a guy that's, I mean, let's be real. Slim is an alcoholic during the prohibition days. So this is one of those guys that's really dependent on alcohol, but he's funny. Like he's a legitimate funny guy. So even in a dangerous situation, it wouldn't be unrealistic for that character to actually just say something just super funny, where it's just like, oh, like when he does the "I shit my pants" line, that seemed like something that an old blues man would say if they were in that situation. Because a lot of those guys were extremely charismatic. You got to think about it. Those are the guys that started the rock and roll spirit. The whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll things is a holdover from the blues men from that day and age. So, a lot of those guys' free willing spirit comes from that era. So I love how Slim was for sure. Oh yeah, definitely a lot of people are gonna want a prequel for sure. Oh yeah, you would get along well with Slim, Tony. But yeah, I mean, the Childs were awesome. Let's see. As far as other characters, let's go with Remick. I mean, let's talk about Remick. Remick is awesome. Great villain. Jack O'Connell. I'm familiar with Jack O'Connell from Eden Lake, a great horror film. Um, Very cool. He was very good as one of those creepy ass kids. So to see him as a grown man, show up as Remick as an Irish vampire was very cool and a great touch because before I started to look into the soundtrack, and you get a little bit more of Remick's story through some of the images on the soundtrack and the score. So you find out that Remick most likely got to the United States about a good 20 years beforehand. So during the 1910s, from an Irish ship that had capsized and had no survivors. So very Dracula-like. But he's been in the United States for about 20 years. So he's an immigrant to this country, but he's a much older vampire. Now, now with Remick, they don't really explain how old he is per se. But in his story, he talks about how most likely he goes back, his age goes back to the days of the English colonization of Ireland. So he's a very old vampire. He's at least 700 years old up to that particular point. Because Smoke and Stack, after Sammy's awesome performance, he tries to get into the club. And they're strapped for cash, and he offers them, payment. And it comes to find out that he's willing to pay in gold. And it's asked, where did he get this gold from? And he says, I got it from, a place from far away, and from a time that's really long ago. So definitely from the times when the English came to Ireland and did all those crazy things that the Irish are still angry about. If you talk to any Irishman and you ask his opinions on England, you better have a glass of Guinness nearby and a seat, because he's going to go on and on about it. But he also talks about how later on about how his lands were taken away. So that leads credence to it. So I totally would love to see a Remick a prequel, or also something in regards to Remick's adventures in America before we get his story with Sinners. So I think it would be pretty awesome. Like, I think we'll most likely, at the very least, we should be getting a comic book. I think everything that you see in the story would lend itself extremely well to a comic. So I'm looking forward to that very soon. AB would love him since he's an elder. Yeah, exactly. He's a bit old for sure. But yeah, it was a great film. I love Remick because he's very captivating. Like, he has a lot of charisma. That's what I like about him, because when he comes on screen, how he's introduced, as we mentioned earlier, he's being chased by the Choctaw, and he's needing sanctuary in this couple's house, and he's doing everything that he can to get in. He's like, oh my gosh, these Choctaw, they're after me. These Indians, they did me dirty. They killed my wife, and he's totally all beat up and everything like that. And the woman, she has her gun on him, and she's just like, hold up, get up off of my porch or whatever like that. And then Remick looks in and he sees that they're members of the clan, and he plays on that. He's just like, well, I can pay you and everything like that. I got money. And so he's trying to pay into their greed, and to the fact that he's like, well, they're Indians, just help me out, whatever like that. So they lend him sanctuary. And of course, he turns the couple, and they're a part of his trope now. So they're like a vampire musician trope. So they stumble upon Sammy during his transcending performance, and Remick is reminded of his time in his homeland in Ireland, and he's reminded of his people. And it was such a cool tidbit, because he has a good reason for wanting Sammy to join him and become a vampire, because you learn that the vampires, when they bite people, they kind of have like a hive mind thing. So they're able to collect the memories and things of the people that they bite. And so he wants Sammy's talent in order to play music and transcend the past and the present and the future, in order to, basically see his people again in Ireland. And it's a really interesting thing, because you really feel for Remick, because it shows the vampire's loneliness. It's a it goes back to the novel Dracula, where they talk about how lonely Count Dracula is in his castle. He's an old being. Everyone he's ever known has, basically turned into dust by now. So Remick has these memories of Ireland and a time to where before the English had came and changed everything. So he wants to have that again. So you kind of relate to him. And is very cool. The movie takes place in 1932, I believe. Whatever is the same year that Robert Johnson apparently went to the crossroads. Let me see. Let me see. Sinners date in movie. Let me double check. Uh, da, 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 da. Yeah, 1932. Yeah, so it's the same year that Robert Johnson apparently went to the crossroads in the story. But yeah, I mean, it's such a fun film in regards to how layered it is, and you know if you know enough about the Irish and their beef with the British, it makes sense. Let's just say I have some friends that have Irish ancestry. I even have Irish ancestry, but I mean like direct Irish ancestry, like a grandfather from Ireland, and they've always explained to it this way, where they're just like, let's just say if you meet someone that has Irish ancestry and they meet someone from a different country that speaks a different language, let's just say like someone from Ireland meets a Mexican woman, and she speaks Spanish fluently. There's a good chance that that Irish guy is going to learn Spanish because he doesn't have an original language of his own. The original Irish languages, are lost. So they don't have that connection to their language anymore. So they're just like, well, the only language that they know is English. So they're just like, man, forget this language. I'll learn your language so that I can connect with you. So that ties into the Irish in Mexico, and there's a lot of cool stories woven into that. Yeah, see, there you go, Tony. Tony's an Irish Mexican. See, so there's a lot of stories woven into that. Like I've heard all types of cool stories, like of all types of Irish people learning different languages because their spouse speaks that language, and that's a way for them to connect. So and they don't have a connection to the English language, so that's pretty dope. Yours goes back as far as 1100 in Ireland. Oh, that's dope, bumper. Yeah, man. See, that's the cool thing about it, because there's a little bit of everything in this particular movie, and it's completely Southern Gothic. Like it's going to be one of the quintessential Southern Gothic films because of all the things that they're able to, you know, put into this film and not have to give like a ton of exposition about it. Like they'll drop a line or two, and Ryan allows you to piece together all of the different pieces of information yourself. He allows you to do the research and to have conversations with other people that may be a bit more a bit more familiar with the intricacies of the culture or the setting. So it's very cool. Yeah, I love it, man. It's definitely a well done one. Let's see here. So we talk about, well, let's go back a little bit. Let's talk about the iconic scene that everyone's talking about with Sammy, and when he gets his chance to perform his song "I Lied to You," which is dedicated to his father, which is the preacher, and it's all about how, like, he loves his father, how he wants to be a great son, how he wants to make his dad proud of him, and how he doesn't want to disappoint him, but he loves the blues. He loves playing this music. He feels good playing this music. He makes other people feel good playing this music. So how could it be something that's wrong? And he talks about how basically, he has lied to his father about, how he feels about this music and how he wants to continue doing it. So as he's playing this song, it's an amazing song. It's an amazing, um, great, scene, because the way it's shot, it starts off really slow, and you get into the song, and of course, it's one of those great songs that you can't help but to just move your head to it, or tap your feet to it, or tap your hand on your knee, and then over time, it's just like, okay, you get into it. Then you get into like a guitar solo, and the scene transitions, and you see other people that shouldn't necessarily be in the scene. They don't fit the time frame. Like you see like a dancer in the back, and you're just like, wait a second, she's wearing a mask. Like, wait a second, that's not of the time frame. And then you look over, and Sammy's playing the guitar, and you see like this other guy who's obviously like an ancestor, and he's playing like this stringed instrument, and you can tell like this is a guy from like 100 years ago, like hundreds of years ago, I should say, and he's playing his stringed instrument, and you're just like, oh, this is like an ancestor, and it's like representation of how like music is passed down through the generations. And it's such a dope scene because before you know it, then it transitions to like this like Parliament Funkadelic style like guitarist, and like he's doing like this very wow type, guitar sound type solo, and then it just goes into like a disco early hip hop type DJ that's moving the crowd, and it just goes into all these different transitions. And this is like a steady shot. This is a one take shot, and it flows through all the different aspects of the juke joint. It's a good one. Hey, what's going on, Nine? You got Nine in the house. Yeah, you're totally right, Bumper. Like you really care about the characters, and it's been a long time since I could say that every single character that I come about in this film, I have some sort of attachment to, and that's a very rare thing to come across. Like, I can't wait for you guys to see it, like for real. So yeah, it's totally like when you see him, like it's totally gonna remind you of Parliament Funkadelic because he totally has like that rock star style of clothing that they were wearing with George Clinton and the P Funk bands. So and then it flows on to like even people like Grace and Bo, because the music's so great that Grace grabs Bo from gambling to go and dance. And it also shows how games transcends cultures as well, because card games and gambling, because you see the people in the juke joint gambling and playing cards, and right before you get to Grace and Bo, it goes into like this West Coast hip hop transition where you see modern day, or I would say maybe like 90s style hip hop fans, doing like sea walk and like West Coast style dancing. And then you go into the gambling hall and you see people playing like a roulette and everything like that. So you see how like the culture of gambling and everything just kind of molds in together. And then as Grace and Bo join each other to dance, you see one of their ancestors dancing. And it was cool because they asked the actors to get characters from the Asian diaspora that would be authentic, that Asian people from all over would recognize. So that was like super cool that they were able to add people like the Monkey King to it, to show that, yeah, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, if you feel some type of music, it's going to stir up your own ancestors within you. Because if you're dancing, your ancestors are dancing too. If you're dancing, your descendants are going to dance, in the future, because these are things that they're going to learn from you, and these are things that were taught to you. So it's a dope one, guys. Definitely go see it in theaters for sure. You're watching an Argentinian show. It's pretty good, based off a 50s Argentinian comic. What's it called, man? Yeah. Yeah, for real. The Wire is awesome. It's one of my favorite ones for sure. But yeah, guys, like it's that scene is great, and it's one of those scenes that I heard reviewers talking about it, and they didn't really tell too much about it, but they were just everyone was saying that scene, that scene. So once I got to it, it was just like, okay, this is obvious that this is this scene. So I couldn't wait to see it again, and I can't wait to see it in IMAX and 70 millimeter, because it's going to be a great showing. So this will be my third showing of Sinners that I will be seeing, I believe next Tuesday, I believe. So I definitely can't wait to check it out, guys. Let's see what other subjects to talk about. All right, let's talk about some of the things, one of the controversial moments that people have been talking about. And this is about once the vampires have shown up, of course, they're trying to get into the juke joint, and they have been turned away by Smokestack, Annie, Mary, the entire crew, and everything. And they eventually get their way in after a little bit of conniving their way, because the first dent in the protection that everyone has at the juke joint is, for one, they're opening a business, so they want to actually make money. But the thing is, their clientele are poor sharecroppers, and they're getting paid in funny money. And what I mean by funny money is, for those of you that aren't familiar with sharecroppers, I'm a descendant of sharecroppers. So basically, what a sharecropper was well, in my family's history, if you were someone who was enslaved and you were set free, you had all these skills from working on the plantation. So you could have been a woodworker, you could have worked the fields, you could have done a ton of different things. But once the government said, "Hey guys, you're free," all right, so we're a built-in working class. But a lot of people were connected to the plantation that they grew up on, that their parents grew up on, the grandparents probably grew up on, in the case that they weren't sold off to another plantation and such. But they were tied to the land. So basically, whoever owned the land basically said, "Hey guys, I can't pay you a lot, but I'll pay you something, a little bit. You could, work the land, and we'll share the crops. Basically, you'll owe me this much. I'll let you have a little bit of this much. I'll pay you whatever I can, and we'll have that type of agreement." So, some people didn't necessarily have any better opportunities. They were already used to being where they were, so they stayed there. So that's what people like Sammy and other characters like Cornbread represent, because these people were used to working those fields. They were the best at working those fields. And not only just working at the fields, but all types of things related to plantation life. So those plantations sometimes paid them in like wooden nickels or plantation money, which wouldn't be good anywhere else except for like the plantation store. So you see cases of some of the patrons paying Smoke and Stack and Annie with plantation money. And it's one of those things, because that was a real thing. Some people, that's a reason why some people weren't able to amass wealth, because they were getting pretty much screwed. They were having the rug pulled up underneath them in a lot of ways. So it's one of those things that, the details are sprinkled in there. Like, they're not trying to like tell you all of the stories of the background of it, but they're like if you know, one of those types of things. So it's cool. Yeah, like Oktoberfest, yeah. And that's why like if you're born and raised in the South, you'll have certain sayings. Like, my grandmother used to always say, like, never accept a wooden nickel, because where would you spend it other than, one particular place? So basically, the plantations were giving out like like McDonald's gift certificates, basically. So you're like, all right, man, we'll pay you in this gift certificate. So yeah, so they have that bit of a predicament where they have to make money. So the vampires have gold or money, they said, and they send Mary out there because she was white presenting, and she has a bit of black ancestry. And during the Jim Crow days, if you had literally one drop, let me tell you, one drop of black blood, that means you are black, no matter what you look like, which is absolutely crazy to think about in today's age, of how you could be someone, like, seriously, as someone that has cousins that I'm related to that are pretty much basically white. The fact that they would be considered black is super crazy. So Mary represents those characters. So she goes out there assuming that they're just regular white people. They don't know that they're vampires. They just assume like, hey, these people are a little sketchy. We don't know what they're on. Do they mean us harm? So Mary goes out there to see what they're paying with, and that's how they breach the juke joint because, of course, they attack Mary. She goes back into the juke joint because Cornbread, who's guarding the door, lets her in because Mary is she's pretty sassy. So she's like, well, ain't you going to invite me in? And Cornbread's like, oh, well, come on in. So with her being Stack's sweetheart, she lures them by themselves under the guise of getting some nookie, which with Haley Steinfeld looking the way she's looking in this movie, it's kind of hard to blame Stack. No matter how hard he tries to deny her, she's like, come on, I want some. So she lures him by herself, and she bites him, and the next thing you know, Mary and Stack are vampires, and that's how the vampires are, basically revealed to the patrons in the juke joint. And from then is on, and lo and behold, they have this trouble of like, all right, well, how do we get out? Should we just last until the end of the night and things of that nature? But as everyone's leaving the juke joint, because before it's revealed that they're vampires, all that Smoke sees is that Mary has attacked his twin brother. So he doesn't ask any questions. He takes out his twin revolvers and lets her have it. But the only thing they know is that she gets up and runs out later. But before they get to that part, they get all the patrons out of the juke joint, and it's crazy. Is just absolutely crazy how everything really ramps up, and this is the moment that really reminds you of From Dusk Till Dawn. See what everyone's saying? Yeah, the scene is iconic, Jeff. Totally. Yeah, he's totally getting Fred Durst. He's getting his Fred Durst on in that scene for sure, Bumper. They did the same thing in the coal mines, also with fake money. Yeah, only good at the coal mine stores. Yep, exactly. Yeah, and that's why we find out a lot of those corporations, how shady they are going back in the days. And that's why that's why the people in power had to instill systematic racism. Because if you really look at some of the earliest, uprisings in this country, is due to Irish people and black people joining together to basically, try to overthrow their employers, because a lot of the Irish people were indentured servants at that particular time in the U.S., or a lot of the English people as well. So they linked up with a lot of the black slaves, or a lot of the black Indian slaves, or a lot of the Indian slaves, depending on how they fit in, to work together. And they were like, man, we can't have anyone working together like that because they will kick our asses every time. So yeah, man, so it's really crazy how those corporations still to this day, man, they're keeping us down, man. They're trying to still keep us separated, man. That's why I tell people, man, don't let the powers that be separate us. Don't let politics separate us. Don't let race separate us, because we have a lot more stuff in common than we don't. So, and a lot of the people that's putting that stuff, wedging that stuff in between us, are people that are making a lot more money than all of us put together. So that's why, that's one of those things that it's really cool how they represent how all of these cultures are so intertwined in centers. Like, it's a really big thing. You have ancestors too from West Virginia. Yeah, that's a big chance, man, for sure. You read it before it was illegal. Yeah, yeah. A lot of those miscegenation laws are really big. Like, a lot of them are, and that's why they did a lot of that. Like, if you're a one drop black thing, to try to keep people from intermingling, which is really crazy. Long lost cousin. Yeah, man, for real. Yeah, so it's a really dope movie, and I really highly recommend people to see it in theaters. Like, I'm the type of person that I'll tell people, hey, if you can, miss out on seeing it in theaters and just wait for it to come out on VOD, then do it. But this is one of those films that I highly recommend seeing in theaters. But fast forward, so things are getting breached. The vampires are trying to get in, and basically what happens is Bo eventually is like, "Hey, Grace, we gotta go. We gotta think about our daughter. Let's try to get out." So she's like, "Okay, let's go get the car, and I'll be right out when you come around." So he eventually comes back around, and of course, Bo has been turned into a vampire. And like I said, guys, the vampires are a hive mind. So Remic's like, "Hey, I know everything about you. I even know the way you like to be licked and all types of crazy things." So Grace is like, "Oh gosh," and then she's really freaked out when Remick starts speaking to her, and I'm not sure if it's Cantonese or or if it's one of the other Chinese languages. Let's see, because I'm not sure if it's Cantonese or if it's Mandarin. But yeah, he starts speaking to her in a Chinese language, and she's just like, "Oh gosh, okay, that's crazy." So Grace proposes to everyone. It's like, "Hey, we're just sitting ducks here. Maybe we should get on the offense here and just let them in." And they're debating about that for a second, and eventually Grace is just like, "All right, we're gonna go ahead and let them in," because they start taunting them. And Grace is thinking about her daughter and like, "Man, look, we might as well just go ahead and try to take them out." And she lets the vampires in. And this has been a healthy debate amongst people online on whether or not Grace was right or not to invite the vampires in. And I feel like this is a very important scene with Grace, because I think it's a matter of philosophy. I think, it's going to be a matter of the type of person that you are. If you're going to be a more benign person, you probably would be the type to say, "All right, let's just wait for, the sun to come up, and then we can go from there." But if you're the type of person that's like, "I hate sitting on my hands. I hate, this pins and needles feeling of like the anxiety," like myself, I would be one of the ones that would be on board with letting the vampires in, and let's just go ahead and get it on. Because whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And the more you wait, you're just going to have to fight more vampires. So I'm with Grace on that. So I'm with Grace on letting the vampires in. Let's go ahead and strap up, and let's go ahead and see who wins. Yeah, that's when the movie turns. You're right, Happy. That's when the movie turns on its head. Yeah. Yeah, it's about 2 hours and 15 minutes, and it has a mid-credit scene and an after-credit scene. So that's the next thing I was going to get to, which is the movie ends the way it ends, but after Grace lets everyone in, there's the skirmish between the vampires and the people in the juke joint, and of course you're gonna have those that are turned and those that die and things of that nature. But in the scrum, the ones that make it out are Smoke and Sammy, and most of the people have turned. They've barely made it out of the juke joint alive. The sun's almost coming up. And pretty much those are the lone two survivors. But Sammy holds basically Smoke has to take care of Stack on the inside, but he tells Sammy to go outside first. And Sammy's trying to get out there. He's trying to just make it outside and just run to make it to sunlight. Remick catches up to him, and Sammy tries his best, man. He gives him a guitar shot that the honky tonk man and Jeff Jarrett would be so proud of. Oh man, and that's another thing that I thought of, because when Sammy gives Remick that guitar shot, it made me think of Memphis wrestling. So I'm just like, oh, that's another hometown reference right there. So, and the cool thing is that guitar has a silver plate on the inside of it. I don't even know what that part of the guitar is, but on those old guitars that has like those silver parts to it, and it just breaks off into his like head right there, and it looks so cool. I thought that was an incredible part. And Sammy holds him off just enough for Smoke to come out and put a wood stake right through the heart of Remick. And we see a very cool vampire death scene of the vampires going up in flame as Remick is dying and they're all being burnt up by the sun. Very cool scene. And basically, that's pretty much the end of it until we get to the final scene of the main part of the film, which is basically we did learn from Remick when they were trying to get in that the juke joint that Smoke and Stack had bought in the first scene of the movie, for the most part, from this obviously racist guy in town, and they mentioned that, hey, you're obviously Klan, and he's like, man, the Klan isn't around anymore, and Remick's like, well, you know the guy that you bought this juke joint from, this was never going to last because they have plans to kill you as soon as the morning comes. And that was just like such a Easter egg because so much is going on at that point that you kind of almost forget about it. And then it's funny because the twins mention the trunk, and you have little thoughts of what the trunk could be because you are let known that they spent time in Germany in the military, so obviously they're World War I vets. So they survived German trenches and the Chicago streets. So they're war hardened. They know their way around firearms and violent confrontations. So they mentioned the trunk and how they left the trunk in the car with the alcohol. So they didn't get a chance to pop the trunk because it was outside. So once Sammy and Smoke go outside, he tells Sammy to go and that Smoke has some business left to take care of. So he goes to the trunk and he opens it up and you see, guns, and you see their helmets from the war and all types of things. That's the cool thing, with veterans, because the cool thing with the veterans is the fact that they brought back all this cool war stuff. There's all types of cool war items in my family as well. From my uncle who was a World War II vet, and a lot of the Vietnam vets in my family, the Korean War vets, even stuff from my brother when he was in Desert Storm. It's a very, very cool nod to black veterans, and it's fun because he sets everything up like a true soldier, so that when the vigilantes come in trying to kill Smoke and Stack, he already has an ambush set up. And something I didn't see too many people talk about is when they're trying to get into the juke joint, they notice that that the door is locked into the juke joint, and I have a theory on why it was locked. It wasn't just to necessarily keep them in the outside area so that he can mow them down, but I think we never see what necessarily happens to Smoke and to Stack and Mary after Mary runs off and Smoke and Stack takes her away after Annie is turned and almost immediately killed afterwards, so that she's not turned into a vampire fully. And basically, you don't know what happened to them because it's revealed that later on, but in the mid-credit scene, but Smoke doesn't kill Stack. So maybe Mary and Stack are still in the juke joint being protected from the sun, so they can actually make their appearance in the mid-credit scene later. But as Smoke is laying them down, before he lays them down and he's setting up the ambush, he takes off the mojo bag, which is a clear sign that he's ready to die because everyone that he's technically known and loves up until this point has died. I mean, other than Sammy. But, I mean, basically, the woman that you loved, your child, who was been gone for a while, and your twin brother, who you spent most likely every waking moment of your life with, has just died. So, he had nothing left to live for. So you kind of know that Smoke is gonna die in this final scene. So while he's mowing down the clan members, he gets a gunshot wound in his side that you kind of know, it's going to be a fatal wound. He's going to bleed out from it, and he has this beautiful final moment with his vision of Annie and their child, and he peacefully transitions, but not before he gives a few final parting shots into the guy that sold him and Stack the juke joint. So that was a very fitting, very Django Unchained type ending. That was totally the type of ending that I wanted from Django Unchained, to be honest. So that was dope. Um, oh, thank you so much, man. Thank you so much, Tony. I appreciate that. Thanks again for your dad's service, man. Like I said, man, my family has a long history for fighting for this country, so I'm proud of being an American. That's for sure. As I said, as a black man, I'm definitely one of the first to admit that this country is not the easiest to live in, but is definitely not the hardest. So there's no better place to be in than the good old U.S. of A. for sure. So I'm going to definitely do my best to make this country as best as it can be for as long as I can be, for sure. Yeah, man. Hey, man. There's still a few Delta Jukes still around, man. That's cool because I saw this very cool Facebook post about this photographer that went to some Mississippi Delta Juke joints in the '80s, and they just looked so cool. I'll have to try to find that post again and post it up in the Discord. So you didn't know? Oh, you didn't know there was an after credit scene? Happy? Yeah, there's a after credit scene. There's a mid credit scene and an after credit scene. So the film ends with basically of course Smoke mows down the clan members, but he told Sammy to go. But the opening shot of the scene, I should say that again. The opening shot of the movie is basically Sammy coming into his father's church. So he's riding in the car. He's obviously bloodied, bruised. He has like only the neck of his guitar intact, and he walks into his father's church, and his father's basically saying, "See, son, this devil music that you're playing. See all the things that you've been inviting in. Give up the guitar and give your life over to God." And he's telling Sammy to give up the guitar, drop the guitar, son. And before the movie starts, it's a shot of Sammy's hand, and he has the neck of the guitar in his hand. What's left of the guitar after he broke it over Remick's head. So you're left with this thought of like, okay, is Sammy going to drop the guitar and change his life, or is he going to follow his dream? And we finally get the answer that Sammy decides to follow his dream. It cuts to Sammy later on in the car, and he's making his way to Chicago, like he told his cousins earlier in the movie. And his cousins told him like, "Hey, man, you're still gonna have a lot of problems to deal with in Chicago. Life isn't going to be perfect there." But Sammy has a dream. Sammy wants to get off of the plantation. Sammy has a story to tell in his music. And that's the story of rock and roll. These blues men that were growing up on these plantations with dirt floors, and they had these stories of the people that they knew, and that just molded itself into this $1 billion industry that is the music industry in itself, because blues branched off into rock and roll, and then rock and roll goes off into it's so many different subgenres, and then blues also mellows its way down into hip hop through rock and roll, and then all the different subgenres of hip hop that have gone through from that. So the music is going to continue to shape itself thanks to those guys like Sammy that decided that they're going to play the devil's music. Yes. So We have all this amazing music that we have set to all these amazing movies that we love and this culture that we have as horror fans. And it just totally, Sinners just totally just really gets everyone. So I think this is a total masterpiece. As I said, that this is probably, no lie, I think this is probably the greatest horror movie experience, like pure movie going experience in regards to a horror movie that can grasp just all types of people ever since The Exorcist. I wasn't around when The Exorcist was in theaters, but as someone that is a bit of a horror historian that has seen people coming out of theaters to The Exorcist, to know that the effect that The Exorcist has had on horror films and films in general, how The Exorcist was nominated at the Oscars as a horror film during the 70s when cinema was cinema. This is the closest that I've ever had. The only other experience that I can think that would probably come close as a horror movie experience would probably be Alien. So, if you guys are fans of The Exorcist or Alien or just the sheer amount of storytelling that those films were doing with being a scary film at the same time, go see Sinners because it definitely belongs in those conversations. And I'm not the type of person that would put a film in conversation with an iconic horror film that's been around for decades without putting that into consideration. So when I say that, it's not taking it lightly. It's not taking it lightly. Now, The Exorcist is different because the reason why I say Exorcist is because it brought something to cinema that the fans had never seen before. And that's why it scared people so much, because if you look at horror films before then, nothing like that had ever been done before. Like The Exorcist, like if you see that film, it's just something deeper with that film. Even the folklore with behind the scenes, it just freaks you out. And you could talk endlessly about The Exorcist. You could talk endlessly about Alien because there's like all this folklore that's left in these films, and Sinners is the exact same. So definitely recommend it. So the movie ends with Sammy going on his way to Chicago, and you fast forward 60 years. You fast forward 60 years to the 90s because you get to see an older Sammy 60 years later, who was played by Buddy Guy, the iconic, the legendary Chicago bluesman Buddy Guy. So he plays an older version of Sammy, and he's at his club, which is called Pearline. Now, we didn't get a chance to talk about Pearline, but Pearline is a woman that was in town that Sammy falls in love with. Because he's seen her around town, and Sammy, he shoots his shot. But the thing is, Pearline is married, so this is totally in the spirit of blues, because the blues is full of scandal, full of stories of I'm messing around with this married woman, or this woman's messing around with this married man, and next thing you know, someone has to stab someone or someone has to shoot someone because there's a lot of violence in the blues. So I mean that all ties into together. So Buddy Guy does an amazing job as an older Sammy, and this is a great film because it's been a long time since I've seen as many people as I've seen mention them getting emotional at multiple parts of this film. This film is, oh my goodness, there are more than a few parts that make you get a bit emotional because, as I said, the casting was phenomenally done because you really have you have a connection to these characters, and you really feel their connection. Even though this takes place in just one day, you feel, just the love these characters have for each other. So You fast forward to Sammy playing at his bar, and it's closing down at the mid credit scene. So we get to the mid credit scene, and Sammy's sitting at the bar of his club. It's closing down for the night, and the doorman comes in, and he's like, "Hey, boss, we have these two at the door. I told them that you know, the club was shutting down, but they wouldn't take no for an answer. They decided to give me a couple $100, if it's cool with you to come in." And he's like, "Yeah, I don't mind that. Let him come in." And he kind of thinks about it for a bit, and he looks over his shoulder, and who walks in but Stack and Mary in full 90s mode. Stack is wearing a Coogee sweater a la Notorious B.I.G. He has a Gumby haircut like Tupac. He's wearing a Jesus piece. Mary's looking very Fran Drescher, very groove is in the heart. It's definitely a very chilling scene at first because you're just like, oh shit, what are they here for? And Sammy instantly recognizes him, and he's just like, "How are you here?" And Stack reveals that Smoke couldn't kill him. It's like, they got to fighting in the juke joint and everything, and Smoke gets the upper hand on him. And we get to that point where he's just like, I mentioned that he's like, "Well, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you." And then Stack's like, "Well, you always did." And he basically says he couldn't kill his twin brother, even if he was a vampire. But he makes Stack promise to leave Sammy alone and to not harm him. And like a true twin, he kept his word. But the only reason he's back is because I guess he knew that, Sammy's days were numbered. He's getting older, and he gets close to Sammy, and he sniffs him, and like a vampire, like when you smell a steak, and you just kind of smell the rotting of a steak coming, and you're just like, either I better cook this now or I better throw it away. So there was mention of being turned into a vampire in order to save someone from dying. So Stack gives Sammy the opportunity to be turned. He's like, "Hey, you don't have that much time left. I can turn you, and you can continue touring. You can continue playing music, having fun, see the world. Just say the word." And Sammy looks at him, and he's like, "You know what? I appreciate the offer, but no, thank you. I've seen enough of this world. You can tell he's probably curious about what's on the other side." So he turns down his cousin, and Stack looks at Mary, and he's just like, "Well, hey, all right, well, at least I tried." And he looks at him, and you get this really sweet and genuine moment. And he's like, "Hey, man, I got all your records. I'm proud of what you've been doing, but I kind of miss the old stuff, from back in the day, the real music. Do you got any of that still left in you?" And we get this moment where he's like, "Yeah," and he opens up his guitar case, and what you see is the guitar that he had broke off in Remic's head, that he only had the neck for. He obviously kept in his possession and had either fixed, like to put on a whole new rest of the guitar to it, or he had one remade in that image of that particular guitar. And he plays for Stack and Mary the song that he played for Stack in the car earlier in the movie. And you get a little bit of a flashback of young Sammy playing the song for Stack. And man, it tugs at the heartstrings. Oh, because the music is so powerful. It takes you back to that scene because they're so happy in that scene. They're so full of life. They're just like, we're going to make it. We're going to do something that's really epic. And it really gets the eyes misty. And right after he finishes the song, Stack gives Sammy a hug, and it's like one of those genuine hugs. And you see Stack, he still has his young face. He still looks like Michael B. Jordan. Hasn't aged a day. And you see Sammy. You see the scar on his face from when Remick slashed him. And you could he's like Delta Slim in that way. He's that elder statesman bluesman like Delta Slim earlier in the film. He's war torn in regards to being a bluesman. He's seen so much. And like Delta Slim, he has that bluesman story of sorrow that's followed him. And like Delta Slim, on his final day, he was ready to go, and that's very cool. And before they leave, Stack leaves $200 on the bar. And before he leaves, before he leaves, Sammy asks him, he's like, you know what? Well, he says to him, he's like, you know what? Every now and then I wake up terrified because of that night. And he was like, but before the sun went down, that may have been the best day of my life. It's like, and was it the same for you? And Stack thinks about it, and he looks, and he was like, yeah, of course. He was like, that was the last time I saw my brother. That was the last time I felt the sun on my skin. He's like, yeah, that was definitely the best day of my life. And man, if whoever's chopping onions at that time, oh man, it's definitely a deep film. So that's the mid credit scene, and it's a very incredible scene to have, because if you miss out on that scene, the movie's completely different from if you actually watch that scene. So please stay for the mid credit and the after credit scene. And the after credit scene is just as important in my eyes as the mid credit scene, because the after credit scene is basically Sammy singing "This Little Light of Mine," which is the song that the choir is singing as he's driving the car in at the opening scene. And a lot of people miss the symbolism of that song. And it could be because they're not part of the culture, or because they've missed the actual point, the overall point of the movie. Sammy's singing "This Little Light of Mine" at the end, and it's just a little throwaway scene, that, or at least what people would assume is a throwaway scene of him in the church. This is probably before he went off to play at the Juke joint, but he's singing "This Little Light of Mine." And what that song represents, Sammy is the light. Remick wants him because he can be reminded of the light. He can be reminded of, his culture and his people of a time long ago. And not only that, but Sammy represents the light, and his dad basically tries to dim Sammy's light. He wants him to be concealed in the church and hidden away, and only, giving out certain messages. But Sammy isn't meant for just the church. Sammy is meant for something way greater than the church can actually do for him. So he's letting his light shine to the world. And that's what Sammy does. When Sammy leaves his father's church and goes on the way to Chicago, that's what he's doing. He's letting that little light that's inside of him shine for the entire world. And it's obvious that he does that based on the mid-credit scene, which is a fantastic thing, because this is a movie about vampires, and these vampires are trying to steal Sammy's light as well, but they don't. And this is a great thing, because it's something that we all can resonate with. We all have dreams that we want to do, and sometimes people tell us, no, you can't do that. They try to tell us what we can't do, what we shouldn't do, even though we kind of have it within us. And we should all follow those dreams, no matter what they are, and no matter who we are, no matter what our budget is. It's just like we were talking about with the Joe Bob Keep Rolling thing. If you want to be a filmmaker, there's no excuse for you to not be making films now. If you have an iPhone, you have a camera. You don't need expensive software. You can get free software online now. You can use all the resources out there to get out there. Keep rolling. Get your art out there. And that's what I'm all about now, man. You got to do that. And that's what I'm here for with this channel. And I'm glad that I'm letting this light shine. And I'm glad that the GBG are here to join me on that journey, because, guys, as I mentioned before, guys, I was very nervous about starting a YouTube channel for at least a few months. Like I had the idea for at least a year before I decided that I was going to do it. And then when I got the camera, I went ahead and set up everything as far as equipment and everything. I sat on content for like 3 months before I even put anything up because I'm just like, hey, what if no one vibes with it? What if no one watches my shit? No one, what if I get nothing but haters? And, I'm glad that I did because I wouldn't know you guys if I didn't. And that's why movies like Sinners are so important because you never know what this movie is going to do as far as inspiring the next generation. Because I think about how many directors that are around nowadays making art that are just like, hey, I was inspired by The Exorcist. I was inspired by seeing Alien or A Nightmare on Elm Street, Evil Dead, and so forth and so on and so on. I mean, the examples are endless. And I'm hoping that I'll, make it another 30, 40, 50 years so that I can see the next generation that is going to be inspired by this film. Because, mark my words, guys, there are going to be future filmmakers that are inspired by this movie. This is going to inspire a lot of things, and I'm really excited for this film's success because, for an R-rated horror movie to have the budget that this did, for the studios to take a gamble on Ryan, and not only for them to win, but to win big. This movie's making big bucks. Like I've been very fascinated with checking out this film's progress on Box Office Mojo and seeing how much money it's making because this is only going to bode better for unique original ideas because as a horror fan we love our sequels to our favorite franchises and we may tolerate a remake here and there, but nothing gets us excited like some stuff we haven't seen before. That's why I loved recommending to you guys When Evil Lurks, because when I saw When Evil Lurks, I was like, man, this is such a fun horror film because they start the movie right into the action. I've never seen a horror film before where within like the first 2 minutes of the film, you're right into the middle of the story, basically. So, I mean, I like original stuff like that. So, I'm all for, what Ryan has done with this film, and hopefully inspires more original horror films. Maybe Ryan will do more horror films. I would love to see him do another attempt at horror. Um, I could definitely see a Sinners prequel coming out, but I don't think that Ryan will probably direct it. If anything, I could see him possibly writing it, but he will probably hand off the reins of directing it to someone else. But hey, we'll see how it goes. I'm looking forward to it, but we definitely need that prequel ASAP. Let's see what someone said. Let's see what everyone's saying here in the chat. Sorry, I went into a bit of a diatribe. Let's see. Exorcist promotion was huge too. Yeah, exactly. The promotion was very huge. Yeah, Buddy was definitely doing his thing. Yeah, exactly. Sammy didn't care. Sammy was putting it all on the line. But hey, you got to think about it. In the 1930s, getting some and you weren't married was not a guarantee. So I would definitely be shooting my shot as much as I could if I was Sammy. I wouldn't have cared if she was married either. Because Pearline was pretty hot. So you cried during Ray? Hey, Ray was a great film. So, hey, nothing wrong with that. Yeah, when the bartender said come in, that's what it was going to be, more vampires? Yeah, exactly. I was just like, uh-oh. And then when they came in, I'm like, you'll throw that steak away and starve? Yeah, headstocks and neck replacements are coming in rock and roll. Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay. I figured you'd know, Tony. You know better than any of us. Yeah, so I was like, yeah, Sammy saved that neck. So it's like, all right, let me go ahead and keep this. It's the sound. Yeah, you can find the soundtrack on YouTube right now. I'll post the soundtrack in the Discord so that you guys can listen to it. It's a great soundtrack. Yeah. And speaking of which, I should be getting my Sinners poster sometime soon, so I can send it in to get Ludwig Göransson to sign my Sinners poster because that dude's music is fantastic. Like that dude does great music on whatever he's involved in. Um, what's funny is him and Ryan go back to their days at in college, so that's very dope to see. Yeah, Rocky Road to Dublin. Yeah, I mean all those songs are bangers, and the cool thing is like I love how they pulled from traditional songs like Rocky Road to Dublin, or Pick Poor Robin Clean. That's actually like a blues traditional song. Like a lot of like the authenticity is just like so fantastic. Yeah, exactly, Tony. You gotta go after what you want. Hey, I appreciate you guys. Like you guys' support really fuels me to keep going. So I'm glad we can just have these hard talks and just, just really vibe. Hey, I really appreciate that, Tony. Thanks a lot, man. Yeah, good musicians bar, great one still. Exactly. Your movie, that movie made you sit up. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, exactly, man. It's such a great film, and I love when artists could just add something different, and that's what I liked about When Evil Lurks because when they talked about the folklore, which was completely unique to that area of the world, and I'm just like, oh, okay, cool, and that's why I like when storytellers could tell me something a little bit different or bring something that hasn't been done in movies before. Like, okay, we've done the Catholic exorcism thing to death because the Exorcist set the standard. But can we do something else? Because it's hard to beat the Exorcist, like as David Gordon Green found out. So I'm hoping that Mike Flanagan will give it at least a better attempt for sure. I give him a bit more faith. But yeah, guys, like I totally recommend Sinners for sure, guys. I mean it's a great time in the theaters. I don't recommend many in theater experiences, but this one is totally worth it. But guys, yeah, it's definitely a great one, guys. I think that's pretty much it in regards to what I had to talk about with Sinners. But for those of you that may come through and watch the movie on a rewatch, let me know what you think. Are there any thoughts or references that you caught that I didn't speak about? Let me know who's your favorite character, or would you be able to survive one night in that juke joint? It's a lot of discussions that can be had with Sinners, so it's definitely dope. But I'm glad that you guys, hung out with me tonight. I just really wanted to talk about this movie. It's been on my mind a lot, and I want to do a bit more of these hard talks on just random nights where we just get together and just talk about films, what we've seen, and what's on our mind. So I just bought this cool little horror game that's basically it's not necessarily a game that involves around points, but it's more so about your thought process as a horror fan. So it's basically like a psycho breaks into your house. You have two weapons to you have two options of weapon to protect yourself, weapon A or weapon B, and it will give you choices, and you get to tell your reason why you would choose that particular weapon with your horror logic. So it's basically like a big horror philosophy game in some ways. And I saw some people playing it, and I'm like, you know what, that would be a pretty cool game to play at horror conventions while at the after the convention, after having a few drinks in, or to do on the YouTube channel when we're bored. So that seems like something that you guys would be down for. Let's do it. We definitely got Saturday night coming. I should be here. I don't think I have anything that's going to take me away. But if I'm here, I will definitely be putting up the UFC fights on the Discord. So be on the lookout for that, guys. Tony says, I want to play that game. All right, hey, nice, nice. Oh, they're making a. Yeah, I think I heard something about that Halloween game. So yeah, I'm on the lookout for that. It definitely sounds like something that's dope. Yeah, no, we definitely need a Halloween game for sure. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me on this random Center spoiler talk live. I mean, it was a blast. I just had so many thoughts still on my mind about this movie, and I knew I wanted to give you guys a little bit more time to come in and chat about it. But guys, if you haven't already, hit that like button so that it will help the channel out and get other people to check out the Horror Greenbook and maybe stick around. I got some more things in store for us in the upcoming future. I haven't gone to one of my favorite stores in a while, Nightmare Toys, and that was like one of my first videos that kind of took off for me. So, in order to help support them and also to get my son some horror posters for his room, he's been wanting to redecorate his room, and he wants some posters to go up. So that's going to be our next project. So I'm going to support the store and try to get some content as well. So guys, be on the lookout for a new Elm Street Toys video on the horizon. But travelers, thank you so much for hanging out with me here on this Sinners Spoiler Talk Live. I am your travel guide, Brendan, with the Horror Greenbook, signing off and letting you know that it is scary in those streets. So let me know that you made it home safely. Thank you, travelers, and you have a wonderful night. I'll catch you again soon.